Book 1, The Blazing Ronin, Wandering Blades. Chapter 18, Infiltrating the Shogun's Stronghold. Akira led his Blazing Vanguard through the shadowed corridors of Lord Ito's palace, his emerald katana held at the ready. The group moved swiftly but cautiously, alert for any signs of the Shogun's elite guards or other potential threats. The Ronin could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on them with every step deeper into the palace's depths. This was it, the point of no return where they would finally come face to face with Ito's dark ambitions and the ancient evils he had allied himself with. Akira's piercing emerald gaze slid to his companions as they advanced. Kaya, her expression hardened with determination despite the slight tremor in her sword grip. Kozue, the towering crimson-armored Ravager seeming to swell with anticipation of the glorious battle to come. Masaru, the grizzled warrior's intense gaze sweeping their surroundings warily. And finally, Hana, the lithe kunoichi assassin ghosting ahead, her kama scythes held at the ready as she scouted their path. Despite the woman's reassurances about where her loyalties lay, the Ronin could not help but feel a lingering sense of unease gnawing at him. If Hana's former lover Katsumi truly was as skilled as the assassin claimed, and still harbored a grudge from their violent falling out years ago, then Akira knew their paths would likely cross again before this was over. And he dreaded what that could mean for the fragile cohesion of his allies. The group rounded another corner to find their path blocked by a pair of heavy iron-bound doors, easily 20 feet high. Hana tensed, her entire body going rigid as she studied the entrance with narrowed eyes. "This is it?" the assassin murmured, her lightly accented voice tinged with trepidation. "The inner sanctum, where Ito will no doubt be awaiting us alongside his most elite guards." Akira leveled his piercing stare at the doors for a long moment before giving a terse nod. With a sweeping gesture, emerald flames erupted across his body as the Ronin drew upon the Old One's limitless power. The heavy iron barriers seemed to groan in protest before slowly swinging inwards, torn from their hinges by the incredible forces Akira had unleashed. The group strode through the smoldering wreckage, emerging into some kind of ceremonial chamber or ritual space. It was an immense vaulted area easily the size of a cathedral, with a high arched ceiling supported by intricately carved pillars. Braziers burned with emerald flames, bathing the entire space in an eerie jade glow that cast dancing shadows across the floor. But it was the far end of the chamber that made the Ronin's breath catch in his throat. There, surrounded by a series of archaic runic circles and sigils burned into the very stone, stood the unmistakable form of Lord Ito himself. The shogun was garbed in ceremonial robes, his eyes closed as he seemed to be chanting in a guttural, alien tongue. All around him, Akira could sense the power building, the unmistakable taint of ancient, corrupted forces being summoned forth. "Ito," the Ronin shouted, his deep voice echoing through the vaulted chamber. "Your transgressions and dark dealings with powers beyond your comprehension end here." The shogun's eyes snapped open at Akira's words, revealing orbs of burning crimson that seemed to glow from within. A cruel smile split Ito's features as he turned to face the vanguard, raising his arms in a sweeping gesture. "Ah, the legendary Blazing Ronin," he intoned, his voice taking on a strange reverberating quality that set Akira's teeth on edge. "I have been awaiting your arrival, warrior. You and your pathetic allies have provided quite the entertaining diversion as I prepared for this ritual." Ito leveled his burning crimson stare at the Ronin, his next words carrying an unmistakable weight. "Did you really think you could stand against me once I had embraced the true power of the Old Ones? Once I had bound the defiler itself to my will, preparing to unleash its insatiable hunger for destruction upon this world?" A shocked silence fell over the chamber as the shogun's proclamation seemed to linger in the air. Akira felt his breath catch in his throat, the blood draining from his face as the true extent of Ito's madness was finally laid bare. He had made a pact with the defiler, the ancient, primordial evil that Nakamura had warned them about. The same insatiable force of chaos and destruction that the Old Ones had only narrowly managed to imprison thousands of years ago. If Ito succeeded in this ritual, in unleashing the defiler's full power onto the world, the consequences would be unimaginable. All of creation could potentially be consumed by that insatiable hunger, reduced to smoldering ashes amidst the emerald flames of oblivion. "You arrogant fool," the Ronin growled, his deep voice laced with quiet menace as emerald flames erupted across his body once more. "You have no concept of the forces you are attempting to unleash here, the devastation and ruin that will be wrought." Ito simply threw back his head and laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber like rolling thunder. "And you are the deluded one, samurai. Clinging to your outdated notions of honor and balance, you cannot begin to comprehend the power I will soon wield." The shogun's crimson gaze seemed to blaze even brighter as he leveled it at Akira, his next words carrying a dire finality. "The defiler will burn this world of the old one's creation to ashes, and from those smoldering remains, I will forge a new empire. One of eternal darkness and oblivion, with me as its one true ruler." With a sweeping gesture, Ito conjured a massive broadsword that seemed to be composed of swirling tendrils of crimson smoke and shadow. He leveled the blade at the vanguard, his burning gaze sweeping over each of them in turn. "But first, I will take great pleasure in cutting you and your allies down where you stand, Blazing Ronin. Once your defiant flames have been snuffed out, nothing will remain to oppose the coming oblivion." Akira tensed, bracing himself as Ito seemed to swell with power, the ceremonial chamber trembling around him. The Ronin could sense it now, the unmistakable presence of the defiler itself, an ancient insatiable hunger pressing in on them from all sides. This was it. The crucible he had been destined for, the point of no return on his path as the Blazing Ronin. Akira's emerald gaze slid to each of his companions, Kaya, Kozue, Masaru, and finally Hana, the Kunoichi assassin's eyes burning from within her mask. The young warrior opened his mouth to give his final words of encouragement when a strange force seemed to materialize beside him. Toshiro Nakamura, the mysterious merchant, stepped forward with an inscrutable expression. "So, the truth is finally laid bare," the old man rumbled, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. "You have well and truly embraced the darkness, Ito. Trafficked with forces far beyond your comprehension in your mad quest for power." Nakamura's eyes blazed from within as he leveled his piercing stare at the shogun, his next words carrying an unmistakable weight. "The defiler's insatiable hunger cannot be sated, no matter how much you delude yourself otherwise. It will consume everything in its path, leaving nothing but oblivion in its wake, including you and your pathetic ambitions." Ito's eyes seemed to burn even brighter at the merchant's words, his entire body trembling with barely restrained fury. With a sweeping gesture, he conjured a massive swirling vortex of crimson smoke that rapidly expanded to engulf the entire chamber. "You think to lecture me about forces beyond comprehension, old man," the shogun roared, his voice taking on that same strange reverberating quality. "I have witnessed the infinite depths of the defiler's power, allowed its insatiable essence to permeate my very being." As if in response, a series of visions began taking shape amidst the crimson vortex. Akira could only watch in stunned silence as entire celestial realms seemed to be unmade before his eyes, swirling galaxies of stars consumed by searing tendrils of smoke and shadow. And at the center of the cosmic maelstrom, a massive obsidian monolith that seemed to pulse with that same insatiable, corrupted power. The Ronin felt his breath catch in his throat as the same runes and patterns covering his body began etching themselves across the projection's surface. "This is the true face of the defiler, the primordial force I have bound to my will." Ito's voice seemed to echo from everywhere at once, resonating through their very beings. "An insatiable hunger for oblivion, one that will unmake all of creation as you know it." The visions intensified until Akira felt as if he were being overwhelmed, his mind struggling to process the sheer enormity of the evil they were facing. Entire realms of existence crumbling as searing tendrils of smoke and shadow consumed everything in their path, reducing it all to formless oblivion. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the visions began slowing to reveal Ito's ceremonial chamber once more. The shogun leveled his crimson stare at Akira and the vanguard, his next words carrying a dire finality. You cannot stop what has already been set in motion, Ronin. The Defiler's return is inevitable, and once its insatiable hunger has been fully unleashed upon this world, I will be the one to rule over the smoldering ashes as its one true master. A stunned silence fell over the chamber as the weight of Ito's proclamation seemed to linger in the air like a suffocating miasma. Akira could feel the undercurrent of trepidation, of shaken convictions rippling through his warriors. They had known the stakes, the ancient evil they were facing down. But to see it given form, to witness the Defiler's insatiable power to unmake all of creation, it was overwhelming, almost too much for their minds to fully comprehend. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Akira found his voice once more. The Ronin's markings flared brilliantly as he leveled his piercing emerald stare at the shogun, his deep baritone resonating with quiet intensity. You are deluded, Ito. Utterly consumed by your own arrogance and thirst for power. Akira's grip tightened around his katana hilt until his knuckles shone bone white, the brilliant jade blade seeming to shimmer with ethereal energy. The Defiler is an ancient, primordial force, one that has threatened to unmake all of creation since the dawn of time itself. It cannot be bound to anyone's will, no matter how much you have allowed its insatiable essence to corrupt you. The Ronin slowly drew his sword, leveling the blazing emerald blade at Ito as his markings flared ever brighter. You are a fool who has made a pact with oblivion itself. And unless you renounce these dark dealings here and now, I will cut you down where you stand without hesitation or mercy. Ito seemed to swell with fury at Akira's words, his crimson eyes burning like twin suns as he leveled his shadowy broadsword at the Ronin. The chamber trembled around them, the ancient runic circles flaring to blinding life as the shogun's voice rang out in a thunderous roar. Then you will die here alongside your pathetic allies, samurai. I am the master of the Defiler's limitless power, and I will not be defied by a deluded insect clinging to outdated notions of honor and balance. With a sweeping gesture, Ito conjured a series of crimson runic circles that rapidly expanded to engulf the vanguard. Akira braced himself, angling his blazing katana before him as he prepared for the onslaught. But the Ronin need not have worried, for at that moment, a brilliant emerald light began shining from the entrance to the chamber. Nakamura strode forward with an inscrutable expression, his eyes blazing from within as he leveled his stare at the shogun. You are right about one thing, Ito, the old merchant intoned, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. The Defiler's limitless hunger cannot be bound to anyone's will, no matter how much you have allowed its essence to corrupt you. Nakamura's eyes seemed to blaze ever brighter as he gestured towards the vanguard, causing Akira's markings to flare with blinding emerald light. But you are wrong to think this Ronin and his warriors are helpless against its insatiable power. For they have been imbued with the Old One's own limitless truth, their mortal shells elevated to living embodiments of creation itself. As if in response, the brilliant jade light surrounding the vanguard intensified until Akira had to narrow his eyes against the glare. He could feel the Old One's energy suffusing his entire being, granting him newfound awareness and perception of the fundamental forces surrounding them. The Ronin gasped as a series of visions exploded across his mind's eye once more. But this time, the imagery was different. More focused, laden with symbolic meaning and deeper truths about the nature of this existence. Akira saw the Old Ones themselves, humanoid figures of blinding emerald light crafting the very strands of creation. He perceived the infinite depths of their power, the ability to unmake and remake reality on a fundamental level with but a focused thought. And then, he saw the Defiler's true form. A massive, insatiable hunger composed of swirling crimson smoke and shadow, the living embodiment of oblivion itself. The first spirit to turn against the Old One's grand design in the primordial age, threatening to unmake all of creation before being imprisoned for eternity. Akira's mind struggled to comprehend the visions, the sheer enormity of the cosmic forces he was being granted perception of. He could feel the Old One's limitless power surging through his mortal shell, granting him the same abilities they had used to craft this existence from the primordial ether. The Ronin's eyes snapped open, his markings burning with the intensity of a supernova as he leveled his stare at Ito. Nakamura's voice seemed to resonate through Akira's very being, ringing with the weight of destiny itself. "You have been a fool chasing delusions of power and conquest, Shogun," the old merchant's voice echoed through the chamber. "For you have trafficked with forces far beyond your comprehension, ones that could unmake everything with but a mere fraction of their insatiable hunger." Nakamura leveled his stare at Akira, his eyes blazing from within. "Show this deluded insect the true face of the Old One's limitless power, Blazing Ronin. Make him understand the grave error he has committed in awakening the Defiler." Akira gave a solemn nod of acceptance, his emerald katana shimmering with power as he angled the blade before him. The Ronin's markings flared ever brighter, bathing the chamber in brilliant jade light as he leveled his stare at Ito. "This is your last chance, Shogun," Akira stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet intensity. "Renounce your pact with the Defiler and these ancient evils you have allied yourself with. Surrender, or be utterly unmade before the infinite truth of creation." Ito's eyes seemed to burn even brighter with fury at the Ronin's words. With a sweeping gesture, he conjured a massive swirling vortex of crimson smoke that rapidly expanded to engulf the entire chamber once more. "Blind fool," the Shogun roared, his voice taking on that same strange reverberating quality. "I will not be cowed by your deluded posturing, no matter how much of the Old One's power you think you have embraced.